Football fans, far and wide, welcome back to the Football v Football podcast. This is the NFL Divisional Championship round recap. The four best games of the year, or at least that's what it was billed to be. Did it live up to that billing? We're going to go ahead and hop right in. But before we get started, I want to remind you, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, leave a like, comment, subscribe, share. And if you are listening on a podcast platform, go ahead and subscribe and leave a rating there. But we'll go ahead and jump into the first game of the week. Kansas City Chiefs beating the Jacksonville Jaguars, the upstart Jaguars, 27-20. The story of this one, Patrick Mahomes got a bad-looking injury really early in the game here where he got his knee bent, and there was almost the full weight of the defender that landed on him. And he ended up staying in the game to finish the drive somehow, but he was fully limping around. I mean, this looked really bad. This guy was a maniac, essentially, yelling at his coaches to stay in. And he gained my respect given his toughness. I mean, looking at that injury, and he did not look good at all. And you parallel this to or compare it to a lot of the injuries that we see in English football and their reluctance to stay in or they stay down, barely getting touched. Just such different games, and I hope the other football catches up somehow. There's just a respect you gain from somebody when they do something like this, when they play through the pain and do it for their teammates. So I really respected him for that. But, you know, the coaches did put Chad Henne, his backup, into this game for a couple drives, and he threw 7 passes, including 1 touchdown, which was the point difference in the game. You know, and it really proves the importance of having a quality backup and quality backups in general, quality depth. Isaiah Pacheco was absolutely electric in this game, 101 total yards on only 13 touches. I mean, Andy Reid, do you need any more evidence to play your rookies early? I mean, I think you could have gotten a lot more out of him, saved some, some of these close games that you had, the close game to the Texans, losing to the Colts. This guy, Andy Reid, notoriously doesn't like to play rookies. He didn't play this guy early, but he is hitting his stride now. He is the best running back on this team. That's very clear. And Travis Kelce, 14 catches, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, continues to chug along, being very, very valuable to this team. On the defensive end for the Chiefs, Frank Clark was disruptive as a pass rusher. 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 pass defense, 1 QB hit, 1 pick. And Harrison Butker. This guy has redeemed himself as a kicker. He looked completely out of it earlier in the season, and he went 5 for 5 in this game, including a 50-yarder. As for the Jaguars, got to give kudos to them. Had an all-around balanced performance, played above their skill level team-wise all year and in this game as well. Overperformed, kept this game close and competitive. Trevor Lawrence has received a lot of praise over the past month or so, and I think while he has elevated himself from near the bottom of the league, which he was last year, I'm seeing some folks give him a top 5 QB ranking, and I just don't see that yet. He still makes quite a few mistakes, 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in the playoffs. So once he's able to balance that out a little bit more to throw more touchdowns than interceptions, I think he has a pretty high ceiling. So once he's able to correct that, I think he'll be okay. Their offense, very well balanced overall, as I've been saying all year, very complementary. You know the names. I mean, Etienne, Hasty as the running backs, and the Joneses and Ingram and Kirk, just great, just all very good. Not there isn't a weak point. None of them are exceptional, but none of them are bad. And Jamal Agnew, their kick returner, He is an upper echelon kick returner. He had 131 yards on 3 returns, including a 63-yarder, but had a costly fumble that was pretty much the difference in this game. And the last thing I'll shout out, the last person I'll shout out is Alua Khan on the Jags defense. This guy, every time I see their box score, this guy's racking up double-digit tackles and some QB hits every game. Seems they have a promising future as they continue to grow. Many youngsters on this team, but the Chiefs headed back to the AFC Championship game. That's 5 straight now. Unbelievable run by Mahomes and Reed here, and they earned a home game instead of having to play in Atlanta because of what happened in the later games here. So we'll move on to the other or the first NFC divisional championship game here. Philadelphia Eagles beating the New York Jets 38-7. This game to me seemed ripe for an upset because the Eagles limped to the finish line, losing 2 of their last 3 games to end the season, and their only win coming in a 22-16 game, playing against the third stringers of these Giants, with the Eagles playing with their starters desperately trying to salvage their division and the number 1 seed, which they barely did in a 6-point win. Then the rust of first round bye, which sometime manifests itself, and Jalen Hurts being injured, and boy was I wrong. The Eagles put on their best display in this one. They went up 28-0 at halftime, and the Giants couldn't pull a Jaguars and mount any kind of a comeback because the Eagles were more intelligent than the Chargers were. They ran the ball in the second half, and they scored a rushing touchdown with, I believe, Boston Scott or Kenneth Gainwell. Nick Sirianni was hype during this game, yelling at officials and gloating in front of cameras. He's really come a long way since that awkward initial press conference. And the Eagles, their kind of strategy on defense was keying in on stopping the Giants. Their best offensive weapons, essentially. Daniel Jones, preventing him from doing anything as a passer or a runner, which he is very dangerous as. Darius Slayton, their best receiver, only had 1 catch for 4 yards on 5 targets. They did a great job on him. But big picture, the fact that Saquon Barkley stayed healthy for the entire season is a big win in and of itself. So kudos to that Giants staff for allowing him to stay healthy here the entire season. Never thought I'd see the day. The Eagles, on offense, very efficient, ran the ball down the Giants' throats for 268 yards. As I mentioned, Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Sanders combined for over 200 yards. They kept taking advantage of the Giants not covering the tight end. I saw Goddard 5 big catches. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith also had big catches. I think they both combined for 10. The Eagles' defense, very balanced. A very balanced attack on the quarterback here. 8 total QB hits, 5 sacks. Hassan Reddick, 3 of those QB hits. And no one on the team had more than 5 tackles, so it was just extremely well balanced. This team is dangerous. But the Giants can be proud to have overperformed in this way relative to expectations, and I think they probably had the most wins relative to what they were expected to, maybe them and the Seahawks. And in my opinion, Brian Daboll has to be the coach of the year, since really, if you're looking at some of the metrics, the most important metrics in gauging what a coach of the year should be, wins above expectation and essentially coaching up your team above their talent level should be really one of the most important metrics here. So I think he's a very strong candidate, if not the best candidate here. And, the Eagles looking scary going into the NFC title game, and we'll see who their opponent is a little bit later on. But we'll move now to the first Sunday game, the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Buffalo Bills 27-10. The Bills at home with Damar Hamlin there to inspire them in what seemed like what was destined to be their year. High-powered offense all year, only managed a meager 1-yard Josh Allen touchdown run and a field goal, and that was it for their offense. Stephon Diggs was caught screaming on the sideline at Josh Allen, mind you, and left the stadium right after the game. After the game, he also expressed on Twitter that he is not going to accept losing. So he stood resolute in the fact that he was angry and that he left early. And this guy has had some heartbreaking losses in the playoffs, both with Buffalo and Minnesota. I remember just there was visuals of him watching a lot of the parades in AFC and NFC championship games. He tends to stay out there and watch them to be motivated, but it just continues to happen. And as a receiver, there's only so much that he can do. He's very, very skilled, but as a receiver, you really are completely reliant on the quarterback. So I don't completely blame him for being frustrated. Josh Allen had another pick in this game. 0 touchdowns thrown, one interception. It's a really bad part of his game that he just can't seem to shake. And the Bills just had a pathetic run game going. Not getting James Cook involved nearly enough. Only 5 touches. They absolutely need to use him more next year. There's no doubt about that. I think they underused him this year. They need to use him a lot more next year. For the Bills defense, I got to give credit to Matt Milano here. He had 10 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, a pass defense, and a QB hit. But it wasn't enough because Joe Burrow is, as they say, that dude. He is him. This guy is unfazed by the big moment. He showed it at LSU, and many times that doesn't translate to the pros, but for him, this is twice now in 3 years that he's exceeded expectations to reach the AFC Championship. And in his rookie year, perhaps the only reason why he didn't is because he had a terrible regular season injury. So who knows what would have happened if he didn't get injured there. The Bengals, well-balanced offense. Joe Mixon, 123 total yards. Jamar Chase, Hayden Hurst, Samaje Perine, T. Higgins. A lot of scary weapons. And the Bengals defense, incredible performance here. 8 passes defense, 8 QB hits. Just a ton of pressure on this team. Playing in Buffalo, in the elements, in the snow. Really impressive. But huge disappointment at the end of the day for the Buffalo Bills here, who continue their tenure as a tortured franchise that can't win the big one. And meanwhile, the Bengals just keep winning and beating the odds. Fighting adversity despite losing a chance to get a higher seed and threatened with a wild card road game and many things just kind of working against them. But it doesn't matter who they get it done. Moving on now to the final game of the weekend. The San Francisco 49ers beating the Dallas Cowboys 19-12. What a game here. But the big takeaway from this one, given the historic spotlight, and this is nothing that's going to be surprising, criticizing the play of the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, Dak. 2 big interceptions while, especially when you show it relative to Brock Purdy, who, despite being a rookie, had no picks, no turnovers, kept them in there. Doesn't make a mistake that can take your team out of the game. And for Dak, all season, his Achilles heel has been this anticipation throw that he makes that result in interceptions. To me, he doesn't seem to move to another read or run or take a sack or throw it away when the guy he locks in on has a low percentage of making the reception. And a lot of times they play zone defense against him, and he just doesn't see where the other guy is coming from, and they take the ball. And so that has to be corrected. I know that's going to be a big point of emphasis. I think even the Dallas Cowboys official Twitter page came out and said Dak threw those 2 picks, and if not, we could have won this game. So I'm sure he'll work on it in this offseason. Have some Cowboy, Naif, talks about how this is a make or break year for Dak. He has to clean a lot of this stuff up, um, and I would agree because Dak's a tremendous player. Just last week, he had counted for 5 total touchdowns. I mean, his highs are very high, but this interception thing, similar to Josh Allen, can be really bad if he continues to do it. So another point here: Tony Pollard got injured in the first half. That was a huge blow to them. He ended up breaking his fibula, a bad injury, and you know any hope of a comeback uh, was kind of dashed by his injury here. I think it's only a 3-month injury, so he will be back by training camp. But in my estimation, he is the best skill player on that Cowboys offense. So that was a huge blow to them. Kind of underrated. I don't think a lot of people kind of talked about how important how critical his loss was to them in the second half, and the curious case of Diamador Lenore, the Niners defensive back. This guy, he gives up a ton of yards. CeeDee Lamb had 10 catches, 117 yards. And last week, he gave up 10 catches and 130 yards to DK and 2 touchdowns. He's the only glaring weakness. When you look at this Niners defense, they don't have many weaknesses at all. But he is the only glaring weakness on this team, given how many yards he gives up. But yet again, for a second straight game, he gets an interception. And I think to myself, maybe this is all calculated. Maybe it's a rope-a-dope. Maybe he's baiting these quarterbacks in to throwing the ball so much and then strikes and gets them. It's wild, and it's working out for them somehow. That even the worst player on their defense is leading them in turnovers. So for the Cowboys defense, DeMarcus Lawrence was, I think, the only real difference maker on this defense. 6 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 QB hits. And because he was the only one, we look at Micah, who just didn't play up to his high level. His level is a lot higher than what he showed in this game. And Brett Maher missed another extra point to start the game. That's 5 missed extra points in these 2 playoff games. And I thought that had a bigger impact, also similar to the Pollard injury, a bigger impact on this game than a lot of people had initially perceived, given it was ultimately a 7-point difference in this game. And when you are up 6-0 instead of 7-0, you talk more about the other teams, kicking field goals or what kind of every score in the game is makes it so the decision for the other team is dictated by whatever that score is. So when you don't take a gimme like that and make it 7 instead of 6, it really kind of changes the flow of the game and the decisions the other team makes. The Niners' offense actually was contained largely in the run game. McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell combined for, I believe it was 80-something yards, maybe 86 yards total. You got to give big kudos to the Dallas defense there for containing them. I mean, these are, that typically the Niners' running attack is a well-oiled machine, and they kept them in check. But it was George Kittle that killed them in this game with 95 yards, including several big first down catches that really killed morale for them. And I would say as an overall point, covering the tight end has got to be a bigger focus for defenses as they continue to evolve. Because just this weekend, as you look around the league, Travis Kelce, how big of an impact he had, Dallas Goedert, Hayden Hurst, Dawson Knox, and Kittle, and even Dalton Schultz, who at the end of this game had a chance to set up a much better final play for them, a Hail Mary. Instead, they had to do that Stanford Cal band lateral play, which ended up going nowhere. Those Hail Marys always have a better chance of working out. But Schultz didn't get his feet in bounds where nobody else was around him. He very easily could have done that. I digress there. But all these guys played a huge role. Schultz did catch a touchdown. So a lot of these guys, they play huge roles in these games, and they're mostly left wide open. It's something that defenses don't, in a fundamental way, scheme for, and I think part of their evolution is that they're going to have to because tight ends are getting better. Ray 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 McLeod fumbled a punt return for the Niners and almost became the lowercase goat in this game, but he was saved by a stout Niners defense who only allowed 12 points at the end of the day. So the broader point here, Dallas is a great team. They just need Dak to take the next step in his evolution of avoiding turnovers. And like I said, I'm sure he'll work on it this offseason. And the Niners, on the other hand, they just seem destined for a Super Bowl. If I'm being completely honest, I don't want it to happen. I don't want to hear about the Niners winning, whatever would it be, their seventh or so. But it just seems like they have some magic. I'll be rooting against them. I'm sorry, I am a Seahawks supporter. I will be rooting against them, but I just see top to bottom. I don't really see any weaknesses. And up until this playoffs, it was Lenore, and he has 2 interceptions in 2 games. I hate to admit it. And the fact that Brock Purdy isn't throwing picks or fumbling, isn't turning the ball over as a rookie, as Mr. Irrelevant, especially playing against this elite defense in the Cowboys, that's just kind of the cherry on top of how consistently elite this team has been all year and continues to be. So I think this is going to set up for a great championship, AFC championship and NFC championship weekend. You got the Eagles against the Niners, juggernauts, and the Chiefs versus the Bengals. And as you look back overall, the results ended up being mostly chalk. Outside the Bengals here, I thought it was going to be the Giants, but the Bengals, you can't even really say it's chalk at this point because now they're proving to be winners, and they may be headed to back-to-back Super Bowls. So this team may be shedding their reputation as the bungholes and just like a terrible franchise. It may happen for them this year too. I'll save my predictions for the pick'em, but I think it's going to be a wild Super Bowl. So really looking forward to the games next week here in the AFC and NFC championship weekends, the penultimate weekend for the NFL, the semifinal. I think it's going to – I'm really excited for both. I think that no team slipped in here. I think these are the 4 juggernauts that were supposed to be here, and I'm sure everyone's looking forward to those games. So that'll bring this podcast to a close. I want to thank you all for tuning in to the Football v Football podcast. As I mentioned to start the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead, give us a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and then engage as well. Leave a comment, share the podcast. Would really appreciate it. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, one of the 10 that we're on, go ahead and subscribe there and leave us a rating. 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. And if you're on Twitter or Instagram, follow us on there as well. We've got a lot of good content. That's where we share all our stuff. And occasionally I'll post reels and stuff like that and engage on those platforms. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a fantastic day, football fans.